want to talk about in this session is what are the opportunities that these founders here are looking at in and around those. And so let's start quick, rapid fire. We'll start all the way at the end there. What is your name and what are you creating? What's the company you're working on?
Thank you, Chris. Martin Ordonez, founder of FUTURi Power, professor and Kaiser Chair at UBC. We run a tech company. We are creating energy processors that reduce the cost of electricity and creates resilience. It works really well for utilities, builders, deploying infrastructure, and homeowners.
Great. Thanks, Chris. My name is Ath. I'm co-founder of Soma Energy. We build a modern AI platform to help balance the grid. So we create software that unlocks more capacity, quicker access to power, and abundant clean energy for large consumers like data centers.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Angela, and I'm the CTO and co-founder of Hyfluence Systems. We design and build hydrogen fueling equipment to support the decarbonization of the mobility sector.
I'm Eddie Chiang, co-founder and CEO at Moment Energy. We repurpose electric vehicle batteries into stationary energy storage. So distribution, think upgrading the entire archaic grid. We really want to deploy batteries all over to make sure that we can be competitive on energy.
And my name is Derrick Emsley. I'm the co-founder of a company called Veritree. We're building infrastructure for nature-based solutions to help scale reforestation globally, verify, audit, and monitor that work.
Vancouver, in some cases, you brought co-founders from other places in the world to be here. Why is this a place that is really compelling to build energy-centric, climate-centric companies? And maybe we'll start at Derrick and go all the way down.
Sure. This is actually our second company that we're building in the kind of environmental space. Previous to this, we started a direct-to-consumer brand that planted trees and built this technology as a way to solve the issues that we found in reforestation. I think in Canada, we're very acutely aware of the issues that are happening right now from a nature-based standpoint. And in a lot of cases, from an energy creation and infrastructure standpoint, we're kind of living in the future compared to a lot of the other countries out there from the carbon intensity of our grid. And so I think as far as nature-based solutions, which is really the piece that I can speak to most intelligently. We have some of the best people in the world here from places like UBC, and frankly, just some of the most interesting, opportunities, just given the landscape that we have to build these types of solutions.
The honest answer is most likely that myself and the four co-founders all studied here. We grew up in Vancouver, and that was really where we grew the passion for climate, for energy. And I always joke it's really hard to hate the environment when you live in such a beautiful area like Vancouver. So culturally, Vancouver actually ended up bringing in a lot of awesome talent that just all is driven for the same mission, which is helping to save the planet as well as distribute energy across the world. For us, we've actually, thanks to the environment here, we've been able to attract a lot of talent to Vancouver, which sounds a little bit interesting because I would say maybe 5 years ago it was extremely hard. Now we've had 3-4 Tesla engineers move up from San Francisco just for our job opportunity. We have the fire safety engineer from NASA who deployed batteries on the Artemis missions who are now leading our fire safety here. People from Northvolt out in Europe moved all the way to Vancouver, and we're super excited to be building a very large facility in Surrey. And Vancouver is extremely competitive to do manufacturing because our cost of energy is so low. Of course, though, there are other hiccups that we run into when we do manufacture here, but maybe that's for a later conversation.
For me in the hydrogen space, BC in particular and Vancouver has actually been a hub for hydrogen for over 20 years. It started in the 90s with Ballard, and I started my career in hydrogen in the early 2000s, working with Ballard, and just continued on from there. So we've actually found a lot of excellent talent, people with a lot of experience in hydrogen right here in the Lower Mainland. So we've been able to grow actually with experienced hydrogen people.
Yeah, from my perspective, Vancouver is sort of a hub of energy storage for all the Pacific West Coast. So little known that BC Hydro provided a lot of the flexible capacity for California in the late 90s, early 2000s, and that created an ecosystem of energy experts that unfolded other businesses. So building on that experience and expertise, we've been able to recruit expert AI scientists to join us and live in this beautiful city and continue on that energy powerhouse that existed here for many years.
The universities, SFU, UBC, BCIT, and the colleges, phenomenal talent. I personally received over 2,000 applications of very talented folks around the world to join, our research facility. And we can only recruit a few, but as the ecosystem expands, there's going to be more resources to bring in more talent. But I think there is a strong magnet. The post-secondary institutions play a significant role.
So I want to double click on this topic of movement again, right? I'm going to start with you, Ath, right? You had two co-founders. You are the only Canadian co-founder, right? Disclosure, led an investment in their company when I was at Panache. And one of the issues at the time is you were trying to get the other two co-founders into the country, right? I suspect it would have been easier for you guys to have gone to, some other country. So why did the three of you guys decide, okay, you know what, this is where we're going to do it, and convince your two co-founders to uplift their lives and come here and go through all the hassle of trying to get visas here as opposed to other places? What was the linchpin in that decision?
Yeah, to be honest, part of it was driven because I grew up here and lived here, but also we realized that in order to grow the business and the company in the space that we wanted to, we would needed to recruit very specialized AI experts, and Vancouver's a unique area to do that. So we're able to recruit people from across the country. We're an affiliate with the Mila Research Institute in Montreal, and we have a unique presence where a lot of people are interested to move to Vancouver from Canada, create Vancouver as their home. So it's a great place to live, so far it's been great.
And how about you, Edward? What were some of the conversations, right? Like, it's beautiful, it's easy to live, but most people won't actually move based on that thing, right? So what were some of the conversations that you had with the folks you were recruiting, some of these top-notch folks, to say, hey, you know what? Come here, this is the place we're going to build the company. It's not going to be SF, it's not going to be, Austin, it's not going to be some other place.
Totally. How myself and the co-founders really see it as recruiting is really a massive sales exercise as a whole. I think we've really had to sell, especially when you think about recruiting, depending on the age range. Usually it's easier if they're young, just out of university, they're single, they don't have any ties to home. They're pretty interested in coming to a new country and exploring new opportunities. But a lot of the experience, especially building a battery company and a manufacturing company, requires people who have 3 kids already, and they have to pay for college, and now you're really trying to sell them to move their entire lives to Vancouver, and that's the hard part. So there are a lot of benefits in Vancouver that a lot of Americans, let's just say, don't understand. Like, they don't understand the concept of free healthcare or extended, how really paid extended healthcare is really just eye checkups and somebody giving you a massage. They actually expect in their budget that they need to incur a lot of costs for healthcare. So what I would say is, as a founder trying to recruit people into Vancouver, really think about what are the competitive advantages do we have here in Canada, and sell it really hard, honestly. It's not just the job of the economic development people here, like there's Invest Vancouver and whatnot. Now you are a part of that economic development driver. And if you can't sell that vision of Vancouver, it's gonna be extremely hard for people to come in. also full transparency, we've wanted probably 10 people, 13 people to come in, and we've still had success to recruit 5 international people in. It takes a long time, it takes patience, but if you do well, then you can get some top-tier talent as a whole.
Okay, so let's flip that a little, right? I think most of the companies here have raised some amount of capital. I'm going to leave this open to anyone to comment. Have any of your investors pressured you to relocate? Have any of your investors said, hey, you gotta move manufacturing here or relocate your headquarters to there? Or, have you received any pushback on the notion of, no, this is where I want to build this type of company?
I think recently, not as much. Mainly because most of our investors are American. They've felt the turmoil of current American policies, especially in energy and climate, a lot more. So when they see the advantage of us opening, also, like for example, we got funding from the US government to open up a gigafactory in Austin, Texas. They think that's great. They think that's something that will take us to $1 billion. But at the same time, they're actually pretty happy that we also have an external facility in Vancouver manufacturing, because it doesn't actually make much economic sense to manufacture in Austin. Then if we try to sell to Europe, there's a tariff, because now we're an American company. But if we manufacture in Canada and we sell to Europe, there is no tariff. So there are many advantages as well to landing manufacturing here. I think the inertia to start these facilities here is hard, which is why investors will typically want us to move to one of the largest markets in the world. But at the same time, as of today, we haven't gotten too much pressure.
So let me just double click on that, because that's the second time you've alluded to it, right? The challenges in building a manufacturing facility here. What specifically, for those of us who aren't trying to do that, what's hard?
The CapEx required and the infrastructure required to build a gigafactory, for example, something that's producing moment 500 million USD in annual revenue, is not little. For us, it cost about $40 million in investment to then generate 500 million in annual revenues. That's pretty good, I would say, in terms of investment returns. And that's why the US government has now said, yep, this investment makes a lot of sense, do this in Texas. But to do that in Canada has been very difficult. There seems to be a gap between, you can probably get grants for $1 to $2 million through a bunch of programs, and then you have to do $100 million or even $1 billion infrastructure project for you to get any support for the Canadian government. So that's when we start running into issues of, it seems like the US government is definitely willing to double down, and when they say we're onshoring manufacturing, they put money where their mouth is. But as of right now, it doesn't feel like Canada's saying it, but we haven't seen anything actionable just yet.
Got it.
We're assembling here, manufacturing, some of the components of the energy processor here. And I think it's very important to do it locally, to do it well, to understand how it works. And then eventually, maybe that manufacturing line will move somewhere else with economy of scales. But I think it's really, really critical to try to do it in-house. For at least we have some hardware components, and that's what we're trying to do.
All right. So we just touched on the notion of some of the changing winds within America, right? And I'm going to look at you, Derrick, right? You are building something in the climate space, right? And what you were building, and what you spun out with Veritree, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, was very on message for America, and now it's very off message for America, or at least it seems to be. What's that been like? How have things changed? Have they changed? What is the sentiment within the global enterprise customers that you sell to about this topic that seems to kind of blow in the winds with our neighbor to the south?
Yeah, I think the climate space kind of feels like a windsock sometimes of like what is the updated policy or perspective. I think from a building a company in this space and trying to understand what your venture opportunity is or fundraising, it can be really challenging, because what happened in the early days of climate was every venture fund sort of underwrote a few sort of 5 to 10 climate theses. And effectively they all had this massive TAM that they underwrote, and a lot of those TAMs have proven to be not viable. And so what you've seen, particularly in the nature space, is a lot of the investment there is basically dried up. And from a climate VC standpoint, you see a lot of people that were climate VCs are now energy transition. And it's just kind of like this ongoing rebranding of what climate is. And so I think what we've kind of learned along the journey was if you're dependent on the whims of the financial markets and this massive TAM that is in a lot of cases very dependent on external factors that you can't control, you're going to be liable to, frankly, not be able to raise the next round or continue to fund your company. So I think, particularly in the climate space, it's been a realization that you have to find very clear sort of product market and viable unit economics faster as a way to fund your business without using external capital to do it.
Got it. Yeah, please.
I would add that irrespective of what's happening, in the political scene and those fluctuations, you cannot defy gravity. Grandpa's grid is aging and it's failing, and that's happening, and it doesn't matter who, and we need to fix that, right? And I think our approach is to take a look at the fundamentals and really, really keep going in the direction of creating the tech that will solve that problem, and a little bit ignore, the flavor of the day. Yes, I don't know if anybody would, yeah.
And so maybe to sort of turn to the other side of the border, right? Since a lot of this turmoil started happening, there's been a sentiment shift in Canada about sovereignty, right? Like we should have more sovereignty over our energy. We should, put more effort into some of these things. Has any of that actually resulted in any impact in any of your business, whether it be via government interactions, customer interactions, anything? Has anything really day-to-day changed?
Yeah, we've actually, so most of our business, or I should say all of our business has been in the US since we founded the company just over 2.5 years ago. So when the administration changed in the US to be less supportive of climate change, it made us very nervous. What we found, though, was the individual states in the US that were pro-climate, supporting the climate and moving to decarbonize, they took it upon themselves to use state funding to continue to do what they feel is necessary. And it actually has helped us because a lot of the federal funding required Buy America, Build America, which obviously as a Canadian company we're not doing, so it's increased our potential for business there in specific states. Here in Canada, a lot of the larger companies are looking at us as a supplier purely because we are Canadian and we have great technology, but they are viewing it as an advantage to use us.
From our perspective, we've seen it actually come to fruition for smaller companies and smaller partners. So we work with EPCs, engineering procurement companies. There are large ones, right? But there are also super small ones where they serve only Victoria or they serve only a couple cities across the greater Vancouver region to install our batteries. And they also have lots and lots of clients where they can install our batteries in. A lot of the smaller EPC companies feel like they actually are much more patriotic. They actually specifically only want to buy Canadian-made products. While as we get larger and larger and larger, especially when we go to utilities as well as governments, we see it's still slow. Like they have not really adopted Procure Canadian just yet. I'm hoping maybe it's because there's just higher, again, inertia, and at some point, maybe next year, they're going to procure more Canadian products. But that's something that I'm highly encouraging the Canadian government, as well as Canadian utilities, to really focus on, which is let's not buy American products. Let's not buy products that really a ton of local companies are manufacturing in your backyard today, and they can probably give you even better service because they're just down the street from your office.
All right.
I think just one interesting thing from our perspective is, nature doesn't really have sovereign borders in the same way. Like the fires that we experience in northern BC end up in the United States, and everybody sort of gets affected by these things differently. And then climate as well is really shared. And so I think what we've seen in a lot of cases for us when we're working with organizations that want to support and really fund high quality, large scale reforestation projects from a climate perspective, we've actually seen, one is companies don't talk about it as much anymore, but they might still be doing it. The other thing is that organizations are tending to want to support projects that are closer to home, just as a result of it. So an organization in the United States that might historically have funded an international reforestation project is now looking for something that's more down the road.
Just to add, when we get politicians visiting our facility, I just tell them energy is a matter of national security. This is a big deal. Data sovereignty, energy sovereignty, and essentially we need to rebuild the electrification infrastructure in a way that it can be controlled and it can benefit the country and give security, basically. So.
Yeah, I quickly want to add to that as well. That is definitely a massive difference between the US and Canada. When the US decouples from a lot of its international partners, or what they now see as adversaries, they see energy as a national security issue. That's 100%. The US Department of Defense is issuing a ton of extremely low interest loans to manufacturing companies like us on the battery manufacturing side, mainly because they want to onshore battery manufacturing into their country because China has deployed 90% of the world's batteries, and now they see a lot of national security risks where if, we hope that it never happens, but if there was an adversarial event, they see that China can just turn off all the battery energy in the United States. This is what the US is talking about all the time now, but I don't hear that at all in Canada. We just are hyper-focused on the United States as a trade partner, and they're not really thinking about energy as being a national security issue, which I would definitely encourage us to think about for sure.
All right, so we'll open it up for a couple of questions in a minute. I have one last question for all of you, and we'll kind of just go down the row here. Knowing what you know now about building a company in energy and climate, right? A lot of what we hear about, a lot of what we read about is B2B SaaS and vibe coding this and software and whatnot. What advice do you have, or scars, or encouragement, or whatever it may be, to the folks in the audience who are thinking about building in your area, wondering, hey, is this a place where I can build an energy or a nature or a climate-based company?
I think the thing that we've learned is it's very hard to build a company if you are entirely dependent on some sort of external development to create the market for your company. And that's what we've seen in a lot of cases with nature. The addressable market was underwritten by carbon offsets, and that's a market that never really evolved or is still very much in its infancy. And so I think what we've learned as founders is to not build a business based on a market that can be as fickle as that, and really identify opportunities that exist today. And in a lot of cases, like for us, it's been reclamation, remediation work, things like that, and use those to build our solution that we can eventually have the option value should that market evolve.
Maybe more of advice, if I can even give advice, is definitely don't give up. I've seen a lot of founders out there who've given up a little bit too early, mainly because timing is extremely crucial, and many other people would say timing is everything. You want to actually, in many cases when you start your company, it'll feel a little bit early, but that's exactly where you want to be, because if you're building something for the mainstream, it's already a little bit too late. You're not set up, your product is not ready, your team is not ready to actually deliver. An example from us is as we build batteries, it takes 2-3 years to actually develop your first product. At first, when talking about markets, BC looked like a terrible place to start any renewable or privatized renewable energy company. But now, for us at Moment Energy, we have the BC Hydro Battery Incentive Program, where maybe the utility mix isn't actually suited for batteries to charge and discharge, but actually BC Hydro now sees a massive problem with distribution, and now they're giving clients 80 to 90% off of batteries when they buy projects. Again, that's just a timing thing, right? If we said, hey, this is too hard, let's give up, let's never sell it in British Columbia, and we moved up shop down to the US, which is one of the biggest markets, then we would have missed this opportunity that came out year 5, year 6 of the company now. So I would say be patient. The superpower of founder is getting punched in the face and then shaking it off and then moving on from there. And get to know other founders, and you guys will push you together and make sure you don't give up on your dream.
I would say don't be afraid to change your game plan or pivot as conditions change around you. So as an example, when we founded Hyfluence, our plan was to go out and do a Series A raise shortly after. The market at the time wasn't great. Hydrogen was not getting as funded or as much money as it had been the previous years. So we decided to just focus in on product development and just go straight to selling. And it actually worked out really well for us, and we're now a better company for that pivot.
Well, I like the advice Eddie gave about being patient. I think in the climate and energy space, solutions aren't built overnight. And I highly encourage people to think about climate and energy. It's a great field. There's a lot of big problems that need to be solved. And reach for the stars and try and work on a problem that delivers value to your underlying customers. So,
disclaimer, I'm in no position of giving advice. But what I can tell you is that electrification and energy infrastructure is like building an airplane. Boeing, Airbus, they have thousands of suppliers, and they have a value chain that formed and got organized and is very well coordinated. What I would say is that we need to talk more. We need to understand how we're going to rebuild the infrastructure and work together to make it happen. This is not a one-company play. We need hundreds of companies. And I think that it's really about the dialogue and coming together with a master plan.
All right. Thank you all for joining us today. You will be able to ask them plenty of questions after we head over to Goodco. So thank you all.